The desert night is heavy with silence, the kind that makes you feel as though the stars themselves are holding their breath. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of eternity, the sand stretching endlessly behind you, and before you, a great doorway carved into shadow. This is not a doorway of stone or wood, but of mystery, the threshold to the Egyptian afterlife. The Egyptians believed that death was not an end, but a beginning, a passage into a realm where the soul would be tested, guided, and judged. To step into this journey was to leave behind the noise of the living world and enter a place where gods walked beside you, where every heartbeat was measured against truth, and where every whisper of memory was recorded for eternity. It begins with a hush. The soul drifts from the body, carried gently into the realm of shadows. There is no chaos here, no sudden terror, only a calm awareness that something vast and eternal awaits. The air feels different, heavy with meaning, as though each breath is woven with secrets. The Egyptians imagined this moment not with fear, but with reverence. For to enter the afterlife was to step into the embrace of gods who had watched over them since birth. Anubis, the jackal-headed guardian, waits at the threshold. His eyes gleam in the darkness, not with menace, but with calm authority. He does not rush the soul, nor does he frighten it. Instead, he stands as a silent companion, reminding mortals that death is not chaos, but transition. To see Anubis at the doorway was to know that you were not alone, that your journey would be guided, that your steps would be steady. Beyond him, the faint glow of stars illuminates the path. The soul feels the pull of eternity, the promise of judgment, the weight of truth. Somewhere ahead, Thoth waits with his scrolls, ready to record every deed, every word, every choice. The journey has begun, and the afterlife stretches wide, filled with trials, guardians, and rewards. This Egypt's greatest story, not of kings or battles, but of the soul's passage into eternity. It is a tale of wisdom and guardianship, of balance and truth, of gods who walk silently beside mortals in their most fragile moment. To enter the afterlife is to step into a story that has been told for thousands of years, whispered in tombs, carved into stone, and carried in the silence of the desert night. If you love mythology and history from all cultures and forbidden ancient stories, subscribe, because this channel reveals the secrets behind every myth. And let me know from where you're watching. Hopefully not from inside a pyramid tomb, because internet reception down there is terrible. The Egyptians imagined death not as a sudden plunge into darkness, but as the beginning of a guided passage. At the very threshold of this journey stood Anubis, the jackal-headed god, whose calm authority shaped every step the soul would take. His presence was not meant to frighten, but to reassure, for he was the guardian who ensured that the dead were not abandoned in shadow. Anubis was believed to meet the soul as it left the body, his watchful eyes gleaming in the silence of the Duat, the underworld. He did not rush the traveler, nor did he speak, but his presence alone was enough to steady trembling spirits. To see Anubis was to know that the journey ahead would not be faced alone. He was the companion in darkness, the one who walked beside mortals in their most fragile moment. His role extended into the embalming chamber, where priests prepared the body for eternity. Every bandage of linen, every drop of oil, every whispered prayer was overseen by Anubis. The Egyptians believed that without his guidance, the soul would wander lost, unable to find its way through the trials of the afterlife. With him, the body was preserved, the spirit nourished, the path secured. Anubis also stood in the great hall of judgment, where the heart of the deceased was weighed against the feather of Mat. He did not decide the fate that was left to the scales and the truth they revealed, but he ensured that the weighing was fair, that justice was preserved. His calm authority reminded mortals that death was not chaos but balance, that every soul would be judged with honesty. Through every stage of the journey, Anubis remained steady. He was the silent guardian of tombs, the protector of souls, the companion who walked beside mortals from the moment of death until the gates of eternity. His role was not dramatic but essential, a reminder that even in endings there is guidance, and even in silence there is trust. In the vast silence of the afterlife, where shadows stretch endlessly and the stars seem to whisper, one figure stands with scroll and reed pen in hand, Thoth, the divine scribe. His role was not to judge or to punish, but to preserve. Every deed, every word, every choice made in life was carefully recorded, etched into the eternal memory of the cosmos. The Egyptians believed that nothing escaped Thoth's gaze. He was the god of writing, the keeper of knowledge, the one who ensured that truth was never lost. In the great hall of judgment, as Anubis guided the soul to the scales, Thoth stood nearby, ready to inscribe the outcome. His presence was calm, precise, and unyielding. Where mortals might forget, Thoth remembered. Where chaos might distort, Thoth preserved clarity. His scrolls were not mere lists, but sacred records. They carried the weight of eternity, binding the actions of mortals to the balance of the universe. A kind word spoken, a cruel deed committed, a prayer whispered in silence, all were written down. To the Egyptians, this was not surveillance, but assurance. Thoth's record meant that justice would be fair, that truth would endure, that no soul would be judged without honesty. Beyond the hall of judgment, Thoth's influence lingered in daily life. Scribes who copied laws and myths saw themselves as reflections of his divine role. Farmers who measured floods, priests who timed rituals, merchants who tallied goods, all echoed his gift of calculation and record. His wisdom was not confined to temples, but flowed through every corner of civilization. In the afterlife, however, his role was most profound. He was the witness to eternity, the one who ensured that the soul's journey was preserved in truth. Without Thoth, memory would fade, deeds would vanish, and justice would dissolve into silence. With him, the cosmos remained steady, the balance intact, the story of every soul written into the eternal scrolls of the gods. In the grand hall of judgment, silence reigns. The soul stands before a set of scales, gleaming in the dim light, balanced with delicate precision. On one side rests the heart of the deceased, the vessel of memory, emotion, and truth. On the other side lies the feather of Mat, the goddess of balance and justice, light as air, yet heavy with meaning. The Egyptians believed this moment was the most decisive in the journey through the afterlife. The heart, carrying every deed and thought from life, was weighed against the feather, the symbol of cosmic order. If the heart was lighter, the soul was deemed pure, worthy of eternal peace. If heavier, burdened by lies and cruelty, the soul faced dissolution, devoured by Ammit, the fearsome creature who waited nearby with crocodile jaws and lion's claws. Anubis stood beside the scales, his jackal eyes steady, ensuring that the weighing was fair. He did not interfere, nor did he judge, but his calm authority reassured the soul that truth alone would decide its fate. His presence was a reminder that death was not chaos but balance, that every life would be measured with honesty. Thoth, the divine scribe, lingered close, scroll in hand, recording the outcome with precision. His role was not to sway the scales, but to preserve the truth of the moment. Every judgment was inscribed into eternity, ensuring that justice was remembered, that balance was upheld, that the cosmos remained steady. This ritual was not imagined as terror, but as harmony. The Egyptians saw it as the culmination of life's journey, the moment when truth revealed itself, when balance determined destiny. The scales of Mat were more than a tool of judgment. They were a symbol of the universe itself, reminding mortals that to live with integrity was to prepare for eternity. In the hush of the hall, the feather glows softly, the heart trembles, and the scales tip with quiet finality. Balance is revealed, truth preserved, and the soul's path decided. The Egyptians believed that the journey into the afterlife was not something to be faced unprepared. Just as a traveler packs provisions before crossing the desert, so too did the soul require careful preparation before stepping into eternity. These preparations were not hurried tasks, but sacred rituals, each movement, each word, each offering woven with meaning. In the embalming chamber, priests worked with quiet precision. The body was washed with pure water from the Nile, anointed with fragrant oils, and wrapped in linen strips that seemed endless in their careful layering. Each bandage was more than cloth. It was a prayer, a shield against decay, a promise that the soul would remain whole. The process was slow, deliberate, and filled with reverence. For the Egyptians believed that the body was the vessel through which the soul would recognize itself in the afterlife. Amulets were placed among the wrappings, each carrying protective power. The scarab beetle symbolized rebirth, the eye of Horus guarded against evil, and the ankh promised eternal life. These charms were not decoration, but tools, magical companions that would guide the soul through trials and dangers in the duat, the underworld. Priests recited spells from the Book of the Dead, their voices steady, their words echoing through the chamber. These incantations were instructions for the soul, maps through shadowed paths, defenses against hostile spirits. To hear them was to be reminded that death was not chaos, but a journey, and that wisdom and guardianship would light the way. Offerings were made to the gods, bread, beer, incense, and sometimes even prized possessions of the deceased. These gifts were meant to honor the divine and ensure favor in the trials ahead. Families gathered, whispering prayers, trusting that Anubis would guide their loved one and that Thoth would preserve their deeds in truth. Through these rituals, the Egyptians transformed death into preparation. The body was preserved, the soul armed with spells and amulets, the gods invoked as companions. To prepare the soul was to ensure that it would not wander lost, but step confidently into eternity, guided by guardianship and wisdom. The Egyptians imagined the duat, their underworld, as a vast and shadowed realm stretching beneath the earth and sky. It was not a place of eternal torment, nor a simple resting ground, but a labyrinth of rivers, caverns, and gates through which every soul had to pass. To cross the duat was to embark on a journey filled with trials, guardians, and mysteries, each step bringing the traveler closer to judgment and, hopefully, eternal peace. The soul entered the duat, guided by Anubis, whose calm authority steadied the path. His jackal form moved silently through the darkness, leading the way past shadowed corridors and hidden dangers. The Egyptians believed that without his guidance, the soul would falter, lost among the twisting passages. With him, the journey became purposeful, each step aligned with destiny. The Duat was described as a realm of rivers flowing with fire, caverns echoing with silence, and gates guarded by fearsome beings. Each gate demanded a password, a spell, or a declaration of truth. This is where the rituals of preparation mattered most. The amulets placed among the wrappings, the spells recited by priests, the prayers whispered by families. These tools were not symbolic but practical, weapons against chaos, maps through the unknown. Thoth's presence lingered even here. Though he did not walk beside the soul as Anubis did, his wisdom was embedded in the spells, his calculations in the timing of each passage. The stars above mirrored his order, guiding the soul through the night sky as it crossed the shadowed paths below. His influence reminded mortals that knowledge was as vital in death as in life. The journey through the Duat was not meant to terrify, but to teach. Each trial reflected the importance of truth, balance, and preparation. The soul faced guardians, not to be punished, but to prove its worth, to show that it carried integrity, wisdom, and reverence. To cross the Duat was to demonstrate that life had been lived with respect for Mat, the principle of cosmic order. At the end of this passage, the soul emerged into the hall of judgment, weary but guided, tested but preserved. The Duat was not the end, but the bridge, the place where mortals proved themselves before stepping into eternity. As the soul moves deeper into the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, it encounters the first great challenge, the guardians of the threshold. These beings were not imagined as mindless obstacles, but as sacred sentinels, each one standing watch over gates that separated realms of shadow and light. To pass them was to prove worth, to show that preparation and truth had been carried faithfully from the world of the living. The gates themselves were described as towering structures, shimmering with divine energy, each inscribed with names of power. At every threshold, a guardian waited, sometimes in the form of a serpent coiled in silence, sometimes as a towering figure with blazing eyes, sometimes as a creature, part human, part beast. Their presence was not meant to terrify, but to remind the soul that eternity was not given freely. It had to be earned through wisdom, courage, and integrity. Anubis walked beside the soul, his calm authority steadying the traveler. He did not fight the guardians, nor command them to step aside. Instead, he guided the soul to speak the right words, to recite the spells learned in life, to declare truth with confidence. The Egyptians believed that the guardians respected honesty above all else. A soul burdened with lies would falter, its words failing, its path blocked. A soul carrying truth would find the gates opening, the guardians stepping aside. Thoth's influence lingered here as well. Though unseen, his wisdom was embedded in the incantations, his calculations in the timing of each passage. The spells recited by the soul were echoes of his teachings, words that aligned mortal voices with cosmic order. To speak them correctly was to prove that knowledge had been preserved, that wisdom had been honored. The guardians of the threshold were not enemies but teachers. Each demanded proof of preparation. Each tested the soul's memory. Each reminded mortals that the afterlife was a journey of integrity. To pass them was to step closer to judgment, to move deeper into eternity, to show that life had been lived with reverence for Mat, the balance of truth and order. In the hush of the Duat, the gates shimmer, the guardians watch, and the soul steps forward, guided by Anubis, strengthened by Thoth. The soul, having crossed the duat and passed the guardians of the threshold, now arrives at the most solemn moment of its journey, the judgment. Here, in the great hall of Maat, silence hangs heavy, broken only by the faint rustle of scrolls. At the center of the hall stand the scales, gleaming with divine precision. On one side rests the heart of the deceased, heavy with memory, carrying every kindness and cruelty, every truth and lie. On the other side lies the feather of Maat, pure and weightless, the eternal symbol of balance and justice. The outcome of this weighing will decide the soul's fate. Anubis, guardian of the dead, oversees the process with quiet authority. His jackal eyes do not waver, his presence steady as he ensures that the scales remain fair. He does not condemn nor absolve, but his calm vigilance reassures the soul that truth alone will determine destiny. Thoth, the divine scribe, stands nearby with scroll and pen, recording every detail. His role is not to judge, but to preserve, to inscribe the outcome into eternity. If the heart proves light, he writes of the soul's worthiness, its passage into paradise. If heavy, he records its failure, its dissolution into silence. His precision ensures that justice is not forgotten, that balance is eternal. For the worthy, however, the hall opens into light. The soul, freed from burden, steps forward into the field of reeds, a paradise of endless abundance. Here, green fields stretch beneath the sun, rivers flow with clarity, and peace reigns eternal. The Egyptians saw this judgment not as terror, but as truth. It was the culmination of life's journey, the moment when balance revealed itself, when the wicked were separated from the worthy, when eternity was decided with fairness and calm. When the Egyptians looked upward into the velvet canopy of night, they did not see random stars scattered across the heavens. They saw maps, guides, and mystical pathways that mirrored the soul's journey through the afterlife. The night sky was not distant, but intimate, a living scroll written by the gods. Each constellation a symbol of order, each star a beacon of truth. The soul, crossing the duat, was believed to be guided by these celestial lights. Orion, known to the Egyptians as Osiris, rose in the east, a reminder of rebirth and eternal life. Sirius, the brightest star, heralded the flooding of the Nile, its glow a promise of abundance and renewal. To mortals, these stars were signs of survival. To the soul, they were markers along the mystical path to eternity. Thoth, the god of wisdom, was imagined as the keeper of these cosmic maps. His calculations aligned the movements of the moon and stars, ensuring that rituals on earth reflected the rhythms of the heavens. Priests studied the sky with reverence, timing ceremonies to celestial events, believing that to honor the gods was to honor the order of the universe. In the afterlife, Thoth's wisdom became the soul's compass, guiding it through shadowed realms with the light of stars. Anubis, though guardian of the dead, was tied to the night as well. His jackal form prowled the silence of the desert, reflecting the vigilance of constellations that never faltered. To imagine him beneath the stars was to feel protected, to know that even in darkness there was guidance. The Egyptians believed that the soul, walking beneath the night sky, carried Anubis' calm authority as a shield against chaos. The mystical paths through the heavens were not only guides, but lessons. They reminded mortals that life was part of a greater order, that their deeds were woven into the fabric of the cosmos, that eternity was not chaos, but harmony. To gaze at the stars was to glimpse the journey of the soul, a reminder that the afterlife was not distant, but written above them every night. The Egyptians believed that words carried power, not only in life, but in death. To speak a spell was to shape reality, to command protection, to open doors that would otherwise remain closed. In the journey through the afterlife, magic was not a luxury, but a necessity, a shield against chaos, and a guide through the labyrinth of the duat. The Book of the Dead, a collection of sacred texts, was filled with incantations designed to aid the soul. These spells were not random phrases, but carefully crafted instructions, each one serving a purpose. Some opened gates guarded by fearsome beings, others silenced hostile spirits, and still others gave the soul the ability to transform into animals or birds, slipping past dangers unseen. To carry these words was to carry weapons of wisdom, tools that turned the unknown into a navigable path. Anubis, the guardian of the dead, was often invoked in these spells. His name was spoken to ensure protection, his presence called upon to steady the soul in moments of trial. The Egyptians believed that to speak his name was to summon his calm authority, to feel his watchful eyes guiding them through shadow. Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, was equally vital. Many spells were attributed to his teachings, his mastery of language woven into the incantations. He was imagined as the divine author of these texts, the one who gave mortals the ability to speak words that resonated with cosmic order. To recite a spell was to echo Thoth's wisdom, aligning mortal voices with the balance of the universe. The role of magic in the afterlife was not superstition, but preparation. Just as a traveler carries maps and provisions, the soul carried spells to navigate the unknown. These incantations reminded mortals that death was not chaos, but a journey, one that required knowledge, guardianship, and truth. In the hush of the duat, the soul whispers words of power. Gates open, shadows retreat, and the path forward glows faintly with promise. Magic, wisdom, and guardianship intertwine, carrying the traveler closer to eternity. In the hush of the great hall of Mat, the soul faces its most delicate trial. Before it rests, the scales gleaming with divine precision, and upon them lies the heart of the deceased on one side, and the feather of Mat on the other. This moment was imagined by the Egyptians as the ultimate measure of existence, the weighing of truth against purity, the balance of mortal life against cosmic order. The heart was not seen as a mere organ, but as the vessel of memory, conscience, and character. It carried every kindness and cruelty, every truth spoken, and every lie whispered. The Egyptians believed that the heart could not be deceived. It revealed the essence of a person, the weight of their choices, the truth of their soul. The feather of Mat, light as air yet heavy with meaning, symbolized balance, justice, and harmony. It was the eternal standard against which all hearts were measured. To live in accordance with Mat was to live truthfully, to honor fairness, to respect the order of the universe. To fail was to burden the heart, to weigh it down with dishonesty and chaos. Anubis stood beside the scales, his jackal eyes steady, ensuring that the weighing was fair. His calm authority reassured the soul that no trickery would interfere, that truth alone would decide destiny. Thoth, the divine scribe, lingered nearby, recording the outcome with precision, inscribing the fate of the soul into eternity. If the heart proved light, balanced with the feather, the soul was deemed worthy. It would pass into the field of reeds, a paradise of abundance and peace. If heavy, burdened by lies and cruelty, the heart was devoured by Ammit, the fearsome creature who waited nearby, and the soul dissolved into silence. This ritual was not imagined as terror, but as harmony. The Egyptians saw it as the culmination of life's journey, the moment when truth revealed itself, when balance determined destiny. The heart and the feather were more than symbols. They were the essence of existence, reminding mortals that to live with integrity was to prepare for eternity. As the soul continues its passage through the duat, it enters vast temples carved not of stone but of shadow and silence. These temples were imagined as sacred halls hidden deep within the underworld, places where the gods themselves lingered and where the soul was tested in ways more subtle than the weighing of the heart. The walls of these shadowed temples shimmered with hieroglyphs that glowed faintly in the darkness, inscriptions of power that reminded the traveler of the wisdom carried from life. Each corridor stretched endlessly, echoing with chants that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. To walk through these halls was to feel the weight of eternity pressing gently upon the spirit, urging it to remember, to remain steady, to honor truth. Anubis walked beside the soul, his calm authority guiding each step. His presence was not loud but steady, a reminder that even in silence there was protection. He did not speak, but the soul felt his watchful gaze, ensuring that no shadow could deceive, no illusion could lead astray. Thoth's influence lingered in the inscriptions, his wisdom woven into the glowing hieroglyphs. Each symbol was a fragment of cosmic order, a reminder that knowledge was the soul's greatest weapon. To read them was to recall the lessons of life, the importance of balance, the assurance that truth endured even in darkness. The temples were filled with trials, though not of violence or terror. Instead, they tested memory, integrity, and reverence. A soul burdened by lies would falter, unable to read the inscriptions, unable to move forward. A soul carrying truth would find the path illuminated, the hieroglyphs glowing brighter, the way opening into deeper halls. The Egyptians imagined these shadowed temples as mirrors of their earthly sanctuaries. Just as priests moved through sacred courtyards with offerings and chants, so too did the soul move through these halls with reverence and humility. The journey was not punishment, but preparation, a reminder that eternity was built upon wisdom, guardianship, and balance. In the hush of the duat, the temples stand silent, their walls glowing faintly, their corridors stretching endlessly. The soul walks forward, guided by Anubis, strengthened by Thoth, carrying truth through shadow toward the light of eternity. As the soul journeys deeper into the duat, the silence of shadowed temples gives way to a softer presence, the spirits of ancestors. The Egyptians believed that the dead did not vanish into nothingness, but lingered as guides, watching over their descendants, whispering wisdom into the paths of eternity. These spirits were not imagined as ghosts of fear, but as companions of comfort, reminders that family ties endured beyond death. The soul, weary from trials and thresholds, often found strength in these ancestral presences. They appeared as familiar figures, faces remembered from childhood, voices echoing with kindness. To meet them was to feel the warmth of lineage, the assurance that one did not walk alone. The Egyptians honored this belief in daily life, offering food and prayers at household shrines, trusting that ancestors received them in the afterlife and returned blessings in turn. The Egyptians believed that forgetting a name was a kind of death, but remembering it was eternal life. Through Thoth, memory became sacred, a bond that carried families across centuries. The spirits of ancestors were not only companions, but teachers. They reminded the soul of lessons learned in life, of values carried through generations, of the importance of balance and reverence. Their presence in the duat was a reflection of Egypt's belief that eternity was not solitary but communal, that the journey of the soul was strengthened by the wisdom of those who had walked before. In the hush of the underworld, the soul feels their guidance, steady, gentle, eternal. Ancestors walk beside the traveler, their voices soft, their presence calm, carrying the soul closer to judgment, closer to peace, closer to the eternal embrace of the field of reeds. In the vast silence of the afterlife, where every step of the soul is measured and every deed recorded, Thoth stands as the embodiment of wisdom and balance. Known as the divine scribe, he is the keeper of truth, the guardian of knowledge, and the one who ensures that the universe itself remains in harmony. The Egyptians imagined Thoth with the head of an ibis, his long beak curved like the crescent moon, a symbol of calculation, rhythm, and order. He was not a god of chaos or passion, but of clarity. His role was to preserve the balance of Mat, the principle of truth and justice that held the cosmos together. Without Thoth, the stars would falter, the rivers would lose their rhythm, and the scales of judgment would tip into disorder. In the hall of Mat, Thoth's presence was essential. As Anubis oversaw the weighing of the heart, Thoth recorded the outcome with precision. His scrolls were eternal, his words binding. He did not decide fate, but he ensured that fate was preserved, that justice was remembered, that truth was never lost. His calm authority reminded mortals that every action mattered, that every word carried weight, that eternity was shaped by the choices of life. Beyond judgment, Thoth's wisdom extended into the cosmos. He was believed to have measured the heavens, calculated the movements of the stars, and aligned the rhythms of the moon. Priests who studied astronomy and mathematics saw themselves as reflections of his divine role, their calculations echoing his cosmic order. To honor Thoth was to honor knowledge itself, to recognize that wisdom was the foundation of both life and eternity. The Egyptians revered him not only as a recorder, but as a teacher. His wisdom was woven into spells, his calculations into rituals, his clarity into laws. He reminded mortals that to live truthfully was to live in harmony with the universe, that to honor knowledge was to prepare for eternity. In the hush of the duat, Thoth's scrolls gleam softly, his pen moves steadily, his wisdom flows endlessly. He is the eternal scribe, the guardian of truth, the keeper of cosmic order, ensuring that the soul's journey remains aligned with the balance of the universe. The Egyptians believed that the afterlife was not a simple passage, but a series of trials, each one designed to test the strength, wisdom, and truth of the soul. These trials were not imagined as punishments, but as lessons, reflections of the challenges faced in life. Magnified in the shadowed halls of the duat, ancient tales spoke of rivers filled with fire, caverns echoing with silence, and gates guarded by beings whose eyes pierced the soul. Each trial demanded courage, honesty, and preparation. A soul burdened by lies would falter, unable to speak the right words or recall the sacred spells. A soul carrying truth would find the path illuminated, the guardian stepping aside, the dangers dissolving into shadow. Anubis walked beside the traveler, his calm authority steadying each step. He did not fight the trials, nor remove them, but his presence reminded the soul that it was not alone. His watchful gaze gave strength, his silent guidance ensured that fear did not overwhelm. Thoth's wisdom lingered in the incantations, his teachings woven into the spells that opened gates and silenced hostile spirits. The Egyptians believed that knowledge was the greatest weapon in these trials. To recite the words correctly was to echo Thoth's cosmic order, aligning mortal voices with the balance of the universe. Stories told in tombs and temples described these trials as mirrors of life. Just as mortals faced hardship, temptation, and choices in the living world, so too did the soul face them in death. The trials were not meant to destroy, but to reveal, to show whether the soul had lived with integrity, whether it carried the balance of Maat within its heart. At the end of these trials, the soul emerged weary but purified, tested yet strengthened. The Egyptians saw this as the necessary passage before eternal peace, a reminder that eternity was not given freely but earned through truth, wisdom, and guardianship. In the hush of the duat, the trials stand eternal, their shadows deep, their lessons profound. The soul walks forward, guided by Anubis, strengthened by Thoth, carrying truth through hardship toward the promise of paradise. After trials, guardians, and the solemn weighing of the heart, the righteous soul finally steps into the light of eternity. For the Egyptians, this was not a vague promise, but a vivid paradise, the field of reeds. It was imagined as a mirror of Egypt itself, perfected and eternal, green fields stretching endlessly beneath the sun, rivers flowing with clarity, and harvests that never failed. Here, the righteous were rewarded not with jewels or thrones, but with peace, abundance, and harmony. The soul could plow fertile fields without toil, sail upon calm waters without storm, and walk among loved ones without fear of separation. It was a vision of life perfected, where every joy of the Nile was preserved forever, free from hunger, sickness, or sorrow. Anubis, who had guided the soul through shadow, now stepped back, his duty fulfilled. His calm authority had carried the traveler through trials, and now the soul stood in safety, embraced by eternity. Thoth's wisdom, inscribed in scrolls, ensured that the record of righteousness was preserved, that the soul's deeds were remembered, that its reward was just. The Egyptians believed that the righteous did not simply rest, but thrived. They joined the company of the gods, walking in harmony with Osiris, the lord of the afterlife, and basking in the eternal order of Maat. Ancestors gathered here too, their spirits reunited, their voices soft with joy. Eternity was not solitude but community, a place where family ties and divine companionship endured forever. The rewards for the righteous were not imagined as luxury but as balance. To live truthfully was to prepare for this peace. To honor Maat was to earn this abundance. To carry integrity was to step into this paradise. The field of reeds was the culmination of life's journey, the eternal promise that truth and justice led not to silence but to joy. In the hush of eternity, the fields shimmer, the rivers flow, and the righteous walk in peace. Their trials are behind them, their burdens dissolved, their reward eternal. Beyond the trials and the luminous field of reeds, the Egyptians imagined that the duat concealed mysteries deeper still, hidden chambers and secret gates. These were places of silence and shadow, where only the most prepared souls could pass. They were not meant to terrify, but to remind mortals that eternity was layered, that truth had to be proven again and again before peace was fully attained. The chambers were described as vast halls carved into the darkness, their walls inscribed with hieroglyphs that glowed faintly, revealing fragments of cosmic wisdom. Each chamber held a secret, a test of memory or courage. Some demanded the soul to recall sacred names, others required the recitation of spells, and still others asked for declarations of truth. To falter was to remain trapped in shadow. To succeed was to move closer to eternal harmony. The gates were even more formidable. Each one was guarded by beings of immense power, serpents coiled in silence, towering figures with blazing eyes, or creatures part human, part beast. They did not open for strength alone, but for knowledge. The Egyptians believed that the soul had to speak the correct words, passwords drawn from the Book of the Dead, to pass through. These gates were not barriers, but lessons, reminding mortals that wisdom was the key to eternity. His cosmic order was woven into the gates themselves, ensuring that only truth could pass, that only balance could endure. To speak his words was to align with the universe, to prove that the soul carried integrity into eternity. The hidden chambers and secret gates were not imagined as obstacles, but as sacred thresholds. They reminded mortals that eternity was not given freely, but earned through reverence, wisdom, and truth. To pass them was to step closer to peace, to move deeper into the embrace of the gods, to prove that the soul had lived in harmony with Maat. Strengthened by Thoth, carrying truth through shadow toward eternal light. After trials, guardians, and the solemn weighing of the heart, the righteous soul finally arrives at the most cherished destination. In Egyptian belief, the field of reeds, this was paradise, not imagined as a distant heaven, but as a perfected Egypt, a land of endless abundance, shimmering waters, and fertile fields that never failed. Here, the soul was free from hunger, sickness, and sorrow. The righteous could plow the fields without toil, sail upon calm rivers without storm, and walk among loved ones without fear of separation. It was a vision of life perfected, where every joy of the Nile was preserved forever, magnified into eternity. Osiris, Lord of the Afterlife, welcomed the righteous into his domain. To walk beside him was to share in divine harmony, to live in balance with Maat, the eternal principle of truth and justice. Ancestors gathered here too, their spirits reunited, their voices soft with joy. Eternity was not solitude but community, a place where family ties and divine companionship endured forever. The field of reeds was not imagined as luxury but as balance. To live truthfully was to prepare for this peace. To honor Maat was to earn this abundance. To carry integrity was to step into this paradise. It was the culmination of life's journey, the eternal promise that truth and justice led not to silence but to joy. In the hush of eternity, the fields shimmer beneath the sun, the rivers flow endlessly, and the righteous walk in harmony. Their trials are behind them, their burdens dissolved, their reward eternal. The journey through the Egyptian afterlife was never imagined as a tale of fear, but as a story of preparation, wisdom, and truth. From the embalming rituals that preserved the body, to the trials of the duat, to the weighing of the heart against the feather of Maat, every step reflected the Egyptians' deep belief that life and death were bound together by balance. Anubis, with his calm authority, reminded mortals that guardianship was essential, that protection and guidance carried the soul through shadow. Thoth, with his wisdom and cosmic order, showed that knowledge was the greatest weapon, that truth and clarity were the keys to eternity. Together, they embodied the principles of Maat, justice, harmony, and balance. The lessons of the Egyptian afterlife are timeless. They teach us that integrity matters more than wealth, that preparation is the path to peace, and that truth is the light that guides us through darkness. Death was not seen as an end, but as a continuation, a journey where the righteous were rewarded with eternal abundance in the field of reeds, reunited with ancestors, embraced by the gods, and freed from sorrow. And so, the story closes. The soul has walked through shadowed temples, faced guardians, spoken spells, and proven its worth. It now rests in eternal peace, surrounded by shimmering fields and flowing rivers, embraced by harmony. As the Egyptians believed, eternity is not chaos but balance, not silence but joy. The journey is complete, the lessons are clear, and the soul rests in the gentle embrace of the afterlife. And now, as the story fades into quiet, let your own thoughts drift like the Nile beneath the stars. May wisdom guide you, may calm protect you, and may peace surround you. Good night.